Hi, this is Joanne Dennison, and welcome to the first podcast of 2022 of Sit in the Attendees Chair. We've taken a little like 5-month hiatus from them, but we got lots of good ones coming up and planned, and I'm really excited to do this one today. Okay, I'm always excited when we do these, but we'll just go with, I am really excited to do this one today. So I want to introduce you. We're doing something very different since those of you who have listened from the beginning know this has been a learning process in every way. So we came today planning to do it one way technology-wise, and we ended up doing it a different way technology-wise. We actually are, I'm in the studio, in the podcast studio at Westford Community Access TV, which I can't say enough good, wonderful things about. You should look in your community to see what's there. And with me handling, this is a little scary, people, handling the technology today is
Steve the Great, here behind the control board.
Yeah. I kept saying, are you sure we should do this? But so Steve's in the studio with me, and then on Zoom with me, and no, you can't see the video. One, we didn't know we were doing Zoom today, but we all get to see each other, is first of all from, our company is Kelly. Why don't you say a little bit about yourself, Kelly, in case people haven't met you yet?
Hi, my name's Kelly. I work with Joanne. I'm kind of like her assistant. I started out as her student, and then she invited me to come work for her, and I've been loving it ever since.
And we love having her. Some of you may remember Pauline. Pauline is no longer working with us because her visa status has changed. Part of you might remember that she is from France, and so currently she is unable to work with us, but we miss her, and I'm sure she'll drop in occasionally also. But we love having Kelly still with us, and she's taking on more and more responsibility, and couldn't do it without her. And then our guest today is Tracy Baer. And Tracy's on Zoom with us too. So Kelly is remote. Kelly's in Boston right now. And Tracy is outside of Chicago. And Tracy is a student of mine from back in the old days when we used to do in-person classes. Oh my gosh, it doesn't really seem that long ago in some ways. But we met at the Q Center in St. Charles, Illinois. That's right, Tracy? That's where it's located, right? That's where you're located too, right? You live right in St. Charles.
I do.
So Q Center is an absolutely amazing property. I got to go there 2 or 3 times and teach classes, and it has such an incredible history of starting out as a religious retreat or a college or both, and then became a corporate conference center. And it is incredible, and the grounds are incredible, and I just love that property. So look it up. It's about 45 minutes west of Chicago proper. Well, you can't go east. You'll be in the lake.
Is it, what is that rating? It's been so long for the
IAC Center.
Is it IAC?
Yeah, it is a IAC center. I'm pretty sure it still holds the IAC status. So it's fascinating to look at. I just was amazed by that property every time I got to go there. So Tracy came to take one of my in-person classes, and I think you came to the class twice when I had it there. Yep. And we got to know each other, and some of you are going to know a very familiar story about Tracy, but didn't know it was Tracy. But we'll get to that. So Tracy is a CMP from my classes. I'm always very proud of that. Oh, I'm proud of everyone who has a CMP, but obviously I'm, a huge cheerleader for, quote, my CMPs. But she also has the CFMP, which is a Certified Faith Meeting Professional. So we're going to talk about that today and the organization that has that. So hopefully, I know you will learn something new today about the industry because she works in such a specific niche that most of us don't even know exists, to be honest. So, Tracy, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. I'm so glad to see you, even if it's over Zoom. There's a lot of advantages of Zoom. I haven't seen you in quite a while.
Definitely.
So let's start by talking about how did you get into events?
Okay, so I was working as a nurse, doing foot and ankle surgery, and my daughter was turning 13, and I felt like I needed more time at home because, working in events, you have a lot more time at home.
Grass always looks greener, right?
Right. So our local church was looking for an administrative assistant for the administration director, and I badgered the HR lady until she hired me. And
Good.
Yeah.
Persistent.
I did that for a little while until the events manager position opened up, and our administration director thought that would be a good fit for me. And I thought, well, okay, she runs the coffee shop and runs the bookstore and does some meetings, and that's great. Let's do that because it looks like fun.
How big is this church?
It's a mega church outside Chicago, so we have about 6,000 people on the weekends at 5 different locations. There's about 1,500 that come to the location that I was working in.
Wow. And you're up to 5 other satellite churches? I think it was
four others. It's 5 total.
Okay. That's grown even since I met you, because I think there was only 2 at that time.
There might have been 2 or 3. Yeah. So we're up to 5.
Yeah. Hold on.
Did you think when you took that job, okay, I can do this? It's like, as Joanne says, it's easy. Get a room and some coffee.
How hard can it be?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize that it was also going to be like kind of overseeing our building services department. So it was also room setups and opening and closing doors and, like locking the systems and all that. It turned into a lot more than I anticipated, but it was so much fun. We ended up I oversaw a team of 7 ladies, and we had 5 kitchens in the building, and we ended up doing concerts
5 kitchens?
Yep. But we ended up doing concerts for we had VeggieTales twice, the big 25-foot VeggieTales. We did kind of like rock concerts. So we had Super Chick, we had Barlow Girls, we had Avalon. These are faith-based bands. We had Lincoln Brewster. We had all kinds of them. So we would have big concerts. We sell tickets and sell merchandise, and then we'd have ladies' tea. We'd have several seatings of a ladies' tea, which was humongous. We'd have men's breakfasts. And then we'd even do just small things like, board meetings and Bible studies and things like that. So I did that for about 7 years.
Wow.
Any weddings?
Weddings. Oh, yes. Weddings, of course. We had one lady that her whole job was just weddings, and she had a whole team of volunteers that did that. Yep.
How much? So obviously you have a very large sanctuary if it will fit 1,500 people at one time. How many other large meeting and event spaces were in the, I'm still back on the 5 kitchens, but, how many, room space, how big, obviously people could do their wedding reception there, I'm guessing, too.
So we had 28 rooms. We had our major auditorium would seat about 1,800. Then we had a chapel that would seat, they were set like multi-purpose. So you could do round tables or you could do theater. If it was theater, it would seat about 400. We had in our student center, it had its own theater, and it would seat also about 400, but it was also set like a cafe. So it had an entire area that was set with booths and pool tables and Wii and PlayStation, and it had its own cafe. The main church had its own coffee shop. And it had a communion kitchen. That's 3 kitchens. And we had the staff kitchen, it's 4, and then we had the catering kitchen, which was 5. And then down in our children's wing, we called it Kids World. They had their own theater, and it was done in carpet tiers, so the kids could sit on the floor. The tiers were 24 inches wide, and so they wouldn't have to have chairs. And I think they could seat 200 kids in there. And that was its own theater. And those had pods. So they're kindergarten through 5th grade in half moons. So it was kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. And, so then they were also multi-purpose rooms. So and then we had a gymnasium. We had a gymnasium and a stage in there because that was the second worship area before we had the main auditorium. We used to have that area as worship, and that was retrofitted with a gym floor. So we could also have banquets in there, and, but we had basketball teams, we had volleyball teams, we had all kinds of stuff.
And that all fell under that department?
Yep. And when I started, we didn't have a building reservation system. We got that in place as quickly as possible.
It was all done on Post-its stuck on people's
Pretty
desk.
much.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, I'm going to reserve this room tonight, stick, that had to stop.
That didn't fly with you, huh?
No.
It didn't fly. So the largest space, let's say, to have a banquet would have been how many people?
It would have been the gymnasium. And gosh, it's been a little while. I can't remember how many tables we could get in there, but I think we could have 800 people for dinner.
Wow. Okay, so you learned pretty quickly, I'm guessing, a lot of things. And
Yes.
And then is that where you also were in charge of, no, you said it was a volunteer that you did in terms of broadcasting the actual church services, right?
Yeah.
So you learned virtual and technology way before we were thinking about it, because I met you in 2018, I'm guessing, and you'd already been doing it for a couple of years.
We met in 2019, and I started at the church in 2007.
Okay.
So I've been doing that for a while, and because I was producing the services shortly after I started, because I liked the technology of it all. So the producer was the person that ran everything on the inside of the auditorium, and I ran everything on the outside of the auditorium.
So let's explain to the listeners, because if people really haven't seen how some of the mega churches work and everything like that, so you have like a home, a host church, a mothership, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you said, you now have 4 others, and you were streaming the services from the main campus out to those other 4 campuses.
Yes. When we first started doing it, it was a replay. So we have a Saturday night and a Sunday service. So we would record the Saturday night and run the video out so they could have it on Sunday morning.
Okay.
But as technology advanced, then we could live stream. So we've been streaming before this whole...
Way before.
Yeah.
And like, what kind of platforms were you using to do that? I mean, a lot of people only even have heard of some of this stuff in the, past couple of years.
That would be a good question, because we had an entire tech team.
Mm-hmm.
So I just would come in and run the show.
Yeah.
So actually, I couldn't tell you.
You'd call the show, basically, is what you would do.
Yeah.
It sounds like. Got it. That is absolutely amazing. So, boy, were you well prepared for the last 2 years.
You would think. I learned all kinds of stuff last year or 2 years ago.
I still can't even sign on to a Microsoft Teams meeting successfully. I don't know. That platform seems to absolutely hate me. Steve, you want to say something?
I have been enlightened because, I was typically thinking of a religious conference annual meeting. And this is like religious conference on steroids. This is like things going on all the time, all kinds of different things.
Well, it's like a corporation that has
absolutely.
ongoing meetings and events, or an association that has ongoing meetings or events.
I have learned something.
Good. Kelly, are you surprised to hear all this?
I am, yes. It's something I haven't really thought about or heard much about. So I am. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot from this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, people just don't think about this. And I'm trying to decide if this... Well, let's go on with your your life story here, and then we'll go back to the story that now shows up in my class, thanks to Tracy. So you said you did that. That was for your church, and you did that for how many years you held that position?
I held that position until 2015.
Okay.
And then one of our children's pastors had left previously and went to an organization called International Network of Children's Ministry. And he had asked me to come and join him to be the events manager. And so I did. So in 2015, I transitioned over to that organization and was in charge of running the annual conference. At that time, there were 2 of them, an East Coast and a West Coast, called Children's Pastors Conference. And in total, we had about 2,500 children's ministry leaders, not the children, the grown-ups, for a 3-day conference with general sessions, breakouts, and a trade show floor.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I did that for a few years until it was not really a sustainable model. And so I no longer, my services were no longer needed after a few years. So I ended up working outside of the industry for a few years. And then while that was happening behind the scenes. Things were growing again. Since they weren't doing things quite as robustly, they were able to get their feet back under them. And so in February of 2020, I came back just in time to change their in-person event for 2021 to an online event. But now I'm the COO there now, and our event that we just did January of 2022 was full steam ahead, 3 full days, full trade show, 2,500 people.
And where was that held?
In Orlando.
Okay. And, we might as well talk about, I was thinking you're the only person who came back into the industry as the pandemic hit. Everyone else, did their stepping out of the industry to find a job and everything. So it's pretty ironic that you did yours in reverse, but that's all good.
I'm so busy.
I can't even imagine. I know a number of people who got jobs, new jobs, January, February, March, and suddenly had to switch everything to, everyone did, but when it's a new job on top of it, it's like, what? So let's talk about this one because, a lot of people are just beginning to go back to face-to-face meetings or hybrid. So that's my first question. Was your January meeting all face-to-face or was there also hybrid?
So we did our full face-to-face meeting just the way we normally would, but then we recorded the content and we did a live hosted replay, we called it a taste of CPC in February, a month later.
Oh, okay. And did you have a lot of people attend that?
We had maybe around 500 or 600, but we did serve 21 countries.
Wow. But
so was the facility in Orlando that was already under contract, or did you have to find one, or was it Florida because Florida was about the only place you could have a face-to-face meeting for a period of time of a large number?
We're under contract through 2026.
Oh, okay.
At the same space?
No, but in Orlando.
In Orlando. Oh, okay. And where was this? What was the space for this year's? The
we
convention
were at
center?
The Coronado Springs Resort.
Oh, okay. On Disney. Okay. Wow. So it sounds like it went, really well. Talk about charging in and just out of curiosity, what did you all do in terms of COVID protocols? Again, obviously, maybe a little different because it was Florida. You didn't have a lot of state laws to uphold.
We had to follow Disney's rules, which at the time was masks indoors.
Okay.
At all times.
Yeah.
So we did.
Okay.
We didn't have to do by that time. We didn't have to do the change the room setups at all. Mm-hmm. But just to make some people comfortable, we did have a section in our general session that did have chairs that were more spread out.
Okay.
And because we had already been planning to accommodate the COVID room changes, mm-hmm. We in our trade show we had 15-foot aisles, which actually people really appreciated because it wasn't so crowded.
Yeah, I bet.
Getting through, and it actually didn't look bad either. So we might continue 12-foot aisles.
Yeah.
This next year, and it seemed to go really well. We didn't do vaccine status things. We didn't do COVID testing. We didn't do temperature checks.
They didn't have to submit that when they registered or anything like that.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. And we also we weren't the mask police. We left that up to Disney. We just told everybody, this is the protocol. We are asking that you wear a mask. Disney is asking that you wear a mask. So we're just going to leave it at that.
Having Disney behind you helps a lot, I'm guessing.
Yes, definitely. And being able to say that we're going to a location whose organization is the worldwide leader in crowd management was a bonus when it came to making our audience feel at ease about returning to an in-person meeting.
Yep. I can believe that because obviously they've had stricter protocols than the state has many of the times about protecting their brand. That's really, so you said 2,500 people, huh?
Yes.
Oh, welcome back. Yeah. That's awesome though. Do you have another one coming up this year, another big one, or what do you have?
This year? No, we're done. We do the one big one and then the broadcast because we live host it. We go to a studio and we live host it so it doesn't feel so impersonal.
Yeah, no, I like that.
And then throughout the year, we do mini online events. They're like a 1 day, 3 hour, 4 hour kind of a thing. and then webinars, 1 hour webinars, and they're like every other. And then we release recorded trainings and things like that through our membership platform. So we're doing those things behind the scenes throughout the year, all while planning the January event.
And you said, do people actually belong to your organization, or just anyone can? There's members.
Yes, I mean anyone can join membership. It's not exclusive, but we have transitioned to a membership model from an a la carte like store model for the training and resources, and that seems to be going really well because people don't have to like save their emails that have links to things, and they lose their replay links and all that. It's just all on a platform now.
It's also more sustainable for the organization. Easier to plan when you have some clue. And you said people are worldwide?
Yes.
And did you have many people come from, I'm trying to remember what we were doing in January in terms of international travel. And I'm not really remembering because I don't think we could even travel to and from Canada yet in January.
No, we couldn't.
So was everyone at yours from the U.S.?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe January was.
Yeah, January was still kind of because we were coming out of the Omicron first strain thing. So very cool. Okay, so let me ask you this. So talking about associations and certifications and things like that, obviously they now know that you went for your CMP and obtained it. Why did you think that was important? And why did you go for it versus a different certification at the time?
So back when I was at the church and was really starting to fall in love with the meeting planning industry, one of the ladies on my team had been a previous CMP and worked with Marriott. And I really learned a lot from her, and just the respect that the CMP program brings to the industry, and just the language that it brings. It brings a common language that is used around the world. And I thought, like, it's completely unattainable. There's so much involved with that I'm certainly never going to be able to make it. So it was kind of that like far out dream. And so I took a different course, a much simpler course through the International School of Hospitality. And that was encouraged by the church at the time, so that it just gave me, because I didn't have any training in events. I just come
as
from,
most of us don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted a little something behind me just to kind of say, like, yeah, I do know what I'm talking about. And then transitioned into the International Network of Children's Ministry, and wanted so badly to get my CMP. I was too busy. I didn't have time. So when I had my little hiatus, I actually had a lot of time on my hands. And then decided I was, would really like to do it. Didn't know how to get back into it. Wasn't sure. And then you showed up.
Literally in your backyard.
Oh, literally like 2 minutes from my house. It was going to be 16 hours. I had a few already. I was coming to the window of time where you have to have worked within the last 3 years. So I was coming into that like 2.5 year mark. So I'm like, it's like now or never. And so I took your class in April, and I passed the test in August, because at the time it was only 4 times a year.
Yep.
This was offered. So I was super excited when that happened. And so I just, got my CMP in August of 2019.
Amazing. But yeah, I mean, when I realized that you actually lived in St. Charles, and St. Charles is not a huge community from what I can tell, it's, these a series of small towns out there and everything. And this, conference center happens to be there, and Tracy also happens to live there. So it was definitely kind of crazy.
Did Tracy call you when she passed?
Oh, of course.
Of course. I sat in the parking lot, like shaking like a little dog. And I'm like, I passed the test. Oh my gosh. I've never been so nervous in my life. I did everything you did. I read all the books. I read them twice. I did the vocabulary with the highlighter. I ignored the coffee chart. Like, you name it, I did it. And I got to the second question, and I was like, I don't even know what that means. I'm never going to pass this test. What am I doing here? So I was so nervous when I got to the end of the test, like, please be green, please be green. So when the little check mark came up, I just about died. Like, thank the Lord, I passed the test.
Oh my gosh. And I love the fact that you talk about how you came from such a different field, and I think there's so many listeners, so many people I've met in the industry, including myself. Well, I guess I kind of was in the industry, but so many people, like I've met people like you who were, nurses. I've had more than one nurse. I've had a fashion designer. I've had,
Nutritionist.
Who?
A nutritionist.
Nutritionist, a registered dietitian, all these people. And I think when they trip into this industry, and that's kind of how it goes, is like, oh, okay, but you know what? I love this. But again, that feeling of, I'm pretty sure I can do it, but there's that little voice and a lot of other people going, why would you do that? You went to nursing school. Why'd you blah, 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 blah. And I think we all run into that at times, but I think sharing that just because you change fields entirely, and I know you made some other decisions to finish some things that a lot of people run into, as they're going along their career path. I think that's so important that people know it doesn't matter where you started. Just when you find your place, when you find your path, when you find your world, your people, whatever you want to do, you can figure out, and there's resources out there to learn how to do it and do it better. And yeah, I agree. The same reason I got the CMP was because I knew I could do it. Okay, there was a little voice in my head going, maybe not, because I had come from colleges and universities, and I had started my own business because I didn't know not to, which, reflecting back is an interesting thought. But, it was like, but I couldn't say I worked at some big corporation, or, I came out of colleges and universities doing orientations and graduations and all those things, and getting a credential, and in my case, mine was the CMP also. It does make you go, yeah, see, I can. And people just don't question you as much. So there is something to be said for that. But you also have a second certification, which is a relatively new certification, not just to you, but in general, because I was looking at a list I had from about 5 years ago and of like credentials in the industry, and this one wasn't on there. So, it's a pretty new. So let's talk first about the organization that you belong to, RCMA, which is the Religious Conference Management Association, right? I got the name right? Or is it Congress? Do they do conference or Congress? No. They do conference? Okay. Yeah. I thought so. I have to admit, I didn't know anything about this organization until probably less than 10 years ago. They are a member of the Events Industry Council, EIC. So they're one of those 30-something organizations that recognizes and supports the CMP as an overall umbrella industry certification. But if you've listened to past podcasts, you've heard us talk about like CITE and the CIS and ACE-I and... Diana, don't kill me. I forget the letters for your certification. But, that there are then specific ones that go to, if you want to channel in more on one. So just tell you a little bit about my perspective about RCMA, and then certainly Tracy is more of an expert. I had the incredible opportunity for 3 years to speak at their national conference or international conference. And it was just such an interesting learning experience. I love walking around everyone's trade show floors because learning what would be on a trade show floor for someone is pretty interesting. But it was, it kind of sounds silly, but the vibe, the feeling, the aura in this group is unlike anything else, and how they channel faith, not necessarily religion per se, but faith through everything they do. I just found amazing, and I loved being with them, and I loved speaking for them. What were you going to say?
Was that where I think they said they needed 3 square feet per person because everybody brought their Bibles in, they wanted to spread them out? Yeah. So I was teaching a half-day CMP class one year at it,
And I was teaching, for those of you who've sat in class, we, frequently comes up about, linear feet on a classroom table or on a U or a square. And, we talk about it needs to be minimally 1.5, preferably 2, and, 3. And I talk about how everyone brings all their stuff, their laptop, their tablet, their phone, and this gentleman, this is when I think it was the first year I spoke for them. So this was like my first introduction to the types of meetings and events that they planned and the people who they did. And this one guy goes, "Oh, yeah." And I'm not making fun of this at all. It was just like this aha moment. He goes, "Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. When they come, they bring 7 editions of the Bible." And I'm going, in my head, I'm going, there's 7 editions of the Bible? Like, this was like this huge, like, whoa to me. And because one of his groups were scholars that compared and contrasted different versions of the Bible. He's like, it takes up so much room. And I just remember thinking, okay, you have never been in an environment like this before, even logistically. But what I love is he knew his people, and it resonated, and it made my point, apply to his life. So anyway, love RCMA. Tell us about your involvement with RCMA and then about the certification that you have earned from them, Tracy.
So the organization really, what I enjoy about it is that it connects me to other people who are just like-minded. They also are planning faith-based meetings. When I'm in need of a service in Orlando, I'm able to connect with those who are also faith-based, just service providers, which we like to try and stay in that arena if we can. Not always do the CVBs have that type of contact.
Interesting.
Wait,
stop for a minute. Now you got me on another train. Then remind me to come back to this. Do your specs for any of your products and services have something that's very specific to faith-based?
I don't think so.
I was just curious.
I don't think there's anything very specific. The only thing that we are really careful about is who else is meeting in the space. Mm-hmm. That was really one of our big things that we learned. One of the first years we did it, we went on a site visit, mm-hmm. and as we were doing the site visit, there was a bikini contest happening. There was like a beauty contest of some sort. And that was very awkward for the male production team that was traveling with us. So we were like, okay, note to self, we've got to make sure we know who else is in the building as we're traveling. And in Chattanooga, we actually followed a cheerleading contest. So it was borderline awkward. So that's just something that we are mindful of. But I don't know that we have anything specific in our specs.
Casinos.
Yeah, obviously you can't do anything like casinos. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Sorry, just thought of that because, I've met meeting planners where, like one that worked for one of the weather meteorological, and everyone, this was back a number of years ago, every hotel they used had to have access to the weather channel. Just like you talk to these people and it's just like these little things that you wouldn't think of until you're in the organization. So anyway, back to you're finding people through RCMA. Go ahead.
And discovered that they had a certified faith-based meeting planners certification, and thought, well, even though I have the CMP, this is really in kind of in our wheelhouse, in my wheelhouse. It's in our area of expertise, and I thought it would be really, really great to have that certification added to my credentials, just to serve the organization that I work for in just a different fashion. I feel like the CMP, of course, speaks for itself, and I love that. I can come to the table and, like you said, not have to explain myself. But this just adds another layer to the conversation even before I get there.
Yep.
And it also says to the folks that I'm working with.
Hang on a second. We lost you for a minute.
As far as faith-based goes, like I have Kelly.
I can hear you.
Do I have Joanne back?
Yeah, it's on our end. Can we all hear each other now?
I'm back.
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
back.
Good.
Okay.
Just repeat a little bit of what you just said.
Gotcha.
The one thing these days is you no longer have to explain to people that technology causes problems. So go right ahead.
No, what I was saying is that the CFMP, having that credential in our world, it just, like the CMP, speaks ahead of me when I'm going into a meeting, that this is going to be a faith-based conversation. And it brings just a different feel to the room. People tend to use different words. They're speaking in, to our organization than they would maybe in some other conversations. And they know that we're looking for certain things. And it depends on with the situation, but some of the things that we learned in the CFMP course within the training is just things that you may not think about, like how what legal terms, different legal terms that like things that we have to watch out for. Nonprofit, for example, there's a lot of different things for now. And Steve the Great ought to know about this. Being a tax man, nonprofit is your status, your tax status. It doesn't necessarily define who you are. So there's a difference. People treat you differently knowing you're nonprofit. It just changes the game. So being able to understand how a nonprofit works, how that affects your contracts, all that kind of thing. You learn a little bit more about that.
Did you learn about UBIT? Unrelated business income tax? Did you all learn about that at all when they were talking about that nonprofit? No?
I don't think so.
No. If you ever need... Yeah.
Talk to me later.
I know. I've been listening to the podcast and I'm like, I think Steve and I need to have a conversation.
Yeah, especially if you're COO now. I would think also, because I know when RCMA in the early days, and I don't honestly know if Christian was actually in the name or not, but it was a heavily Christian-based organization. But one of the things I was so impressed by when I went, because that was kind of my image of it, was how much diversity there was in the attendees, of all types of Christian faiths, but other faiths. Boy, that's hard. Also, so I'm imagining that because you might be faith-based, but not necessarily to a specific religion. So I'm guessing inclusivity is a big, like making sure when you're picking meals, when you're, just being, and I'm sure the RCMA staff, I know they are, because I would watch things and go, oh, they're doing this because of, inclusivity meant something completely different. And what I loved, that is the only organization that I've ever spoken to a group where I had 80-something-year-olds in my room. And for those of you who don't know, it's very interesting because a lot of the people who attend this conference, they are volunteers, especially the women. They were their church's this, they belong to a group of women who do a regional this, who then do a national meeting. These women are incredible. Well, some of them keep doing it, and I mean doing it well, in their 70s and 80s. And to learn, there was probably people there in their 90s for all I know. They have run these church-based conferences and meetings in their faith for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And it was amazing to meet these. It was primarily women. So there was paid staff that were planning meetings and events, and there were volunteer staff who had devoted their whole life to running. And a lot of it was, would you agree, Tracy, women's, I don't even know what they would be called. A lot of the Christian church lines have them, but what was way cool, one was hearing the events that they were doing. But one of the breakout sessions I did at maybe the last one was actually on different generations, how to include different generations in your meeting and event. And I had people in the room who were in their 20s, and I had people in the room who were in their 80s. And for all of you who think that, someone in their 80s is going to go, well, this is the way we've done it for 60 years. These women, they just jumped all over the material that I was talking about. Like, oh, because it was like, how do you bring the generations together? And I was talking about how a lot of research had been done that showed younger generations got tired of hearing, well, it's our 50-year anniversary and this is how we started. So how do you bring that heritage and history of a group? And I don't know if your group gets involved in this at all or not too, but how do you bring the history and heritage to your group to a younger generation without them just tuning out and bored? And they had, once they got going on this idea, how they were going to draw things together to make it more real and live. And even thinking about it, I'm so like energized thinking about being in the room with these people. And this has to have been at least 6 years ago, probably. But it's just that diversity. This is one of the most diverse international, whatever, conferences that you will go to is the RCMA one. So if you have anything to do with faith-based, I would definitely, and if you're someone who is looking at DEI, again, they were doing this way before we were really talking about it. And I was supposed to let you talk, but sorry, this is a really good memory. One of the things that literally brought me to tears is they start out with a sit-down breakfast. Their opening session is a sit-down breakfast, and it was done like family style. Well, not family style, but we were sitting at longs, not rounds. And I can remember to this day, we were in Sacramento, and the Interfaith Council of Sacramento helped them put together the opening session. And what they did was a series of prayers and graces to open the door, and open the whole conference. And there were people from every faith, including indigenous, the Native American. And what they did, I was crying before we even started breakfast. It was so moving because it was that we're more same than we are different. It was definitely that feeling. So sorry, had to go off on those two tangents, but back to you, Tracy, because it's really supposed to be about you. But it was an eye-opener for me as a meeting and event planner too. Like,
definitely,
it's faith-focused, but you need to be inclusive. And how do you do that in all those ways? And like you said, even language that is used and just things that might be very off-putting to someone depending on what their faith was and everything. Yeah.
Well, we serve 40 different denominations as well.
Wow.
So, I get where you're coming from. And we have 80% women. And we do have a variety of ages. So we do have them all the way down to brand new in ministry at 20 years old and all the way to the ones who have been doing it for 60 years. So we have a similar audience as well.
That's so neat, though. Do you just kind of stand in awe of some of those people when
Absolutely.
you meet them? These women, I'll tell you, you want to see a strong group of women, go to these women who are running their churches, or they may not have been able to be the clergy, but they're running the churches. And
our staff is volunteer. There's only 9 of us on staff. We can't run a conference for 2,500 people with 9 people.
Right.
So we do run it with about 100 volunteers.
That's amazing. Kelly, jump in whenever you want to, dear. That wasn't a dear patronizing dear. Don't everyone yell at me. I didn't mean it that way.
I know. No, I don't really have anything to put in right now, but it's interesting just hearing all of it. I'm enjoying listening, but I'll jump in when I have something to say.
Tracy, what was preparing for the exam for the CFMP were there books and classes and things like that? And what was the exam? Was it multiple choice? Was it? So
there's no books. It's just all online. Okay. And you watch the videos, and there's 2 tracks. There's a track for suppliers and a track for planners.
Oh, interesting.
So you could do a supplier CFMP as well. And I just took a lot of notes, and then it's like a 20-question exam for each module. Mm-hmm. And there were 9 modules. budgeting for faith-based, risk management and safety and security, exhibit management, food and beverage management, understanding events and contracts, beginner's guide to record keeping, terminology, acronym definitions, and best practices for new planners. So it's a lot. What it felt like after having taken the CMP, it felt like the CFMP were for those who maybe hadn't done anything yet. Like it was a place to start. It was a lot of great baseline information.
Good. So it could be a standalone or an additional one.
Yep, absolutely.
Very neat. Anything else you want to add about RCMA? Although I did, way too much talking about it. But that organization just was just so enlightening and enjoyable, and everything about it I loved. But
I like the networking and the education that I get out of it.
Where is it? They just had it probably, right? Because it was usually in the winter, like January, February.
It's in January, so I was only able to go 1 year because it was in Chicago, because I had to do it and then leave, or it was either that and then come right back. So it was one of the two, because our conference is always in January as well. So
you're not getting to go.
No, so it was because it was here in our hometown, I could go. But I get to watch the replays and things throughout the year. Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Oh, I'm waiting for this Tracy Baer story.
Oh yeah. So, any of you who have ever been in a class with me, or maybe even some other non-class sessions, know that I'm really huge into copyright and music licensing is what started it years ago. I wrote an article that actually got published in the Meeting Professional on music licensing, and a lot of things have triggered that. So if you've ever been in class with me or a session or read some of the stuff I've written, you know this is a thing with me, a very big thing. And the thing is, most people who are violating music licensing have no idea that they are. They, and I am actually hoping on doing a podcast sometime over the next couple of months on copyright and intellectual property. People have asked for one, and so I'm hoping to do that, more than music, but the others. So I talk about this in my class because it is in, the study materials for the CMP, and we talk about examples and, different things people have run into or done. And of course, the first thing is when I start talking about, the first thing is you hear this gasp and people scrambling and looking confused because they just realize they could be in a heck of a lot of trouble because almost everyone violates it unknowingly. So Tracy was in the class and she goes, "Oh yeah, I have a story about that," when I was talking about it. So for those of you who've been in the class since 2019, you've heard it. You just didn't know it was this Tracy. So now you get to meet the famous Tracy of this story. And for the rest of you, hopefully this will be maybe I need to look into it. So why don't you tell us your story?
Well, I tell it the same way you do. So I was producing the weekend services at our church, and then we stream them out to the remote campuses. And for this particular weekend, we had a guest speaker who happened to be the runner-up from a talent show. Can we say the names of the talent?
I think so.
America's Got Talent. So we had Ketchy from America's Got Talent as a guest. And as she was getting up to speak, we played like a welcome video. It kind of gives a little background on Ketchy, and it also tells the audience why she's here. And we have a feed on Facebook and our website as well. And as she was getting up to speak, we play this little video clip of her and her audition. And not seconds later, our producer, the director, she's like, "Our feed is down. The campuses aren't getting anything." I'm like, "What's happening? Somebody find out what's happening. Is websites down? Facebook is down? Campuses don't get any feed." We were violated. We got shut down. America's Got Talent shut us down because we had not copyrighted the clip of Ketchy singing from the commercial or from the little snippet that we played. And so they shut our feed down. So We had to go through hoops and whatnot in order to be able to get our feedback so that we could finish our church service. So the campuses missed a huge chunk of that particular service. And then after that, from the next services on, we had to put a slide up that said copyrighted material being played or something along those lines, so that in that 2-minute moment, everybody else was seeing a slide. The people in the room could see the video, but nobody else was able to see the video because we didn't have the copyright to be able to play that, because it was going streaming out of the room.
So, and I remember you saying to me, and we never would have thought we were doing anything wrong. We would think America's Got Talent would be happy we were promoting them and everything.
We just got it right off the internet. We just took off YouTube.
Yep. And that's the classic. And that may have been where you brought it up, because one of the biggest things that's done damage to creative and intellectual property is the internet. Well, it's done harm, but then in a minute I'll tell the reverse, because people say, well, I just got it off the internet. If I got it off the internet, it's okay to play it. No, it isn't. Everything is copyrighted, but I won't do the whole copyright speech here right now. But the other thing is the flip side is, because of technology and the internet, they can pick it up, and that's why she was shut down in seconds.
Seconds. I couldn't believe it.
And that blew me away when you told me. I mean, the technology that they could pick that up on a relatively private live stream broadcast versus, and I shouldn't be saying live stream because it might not have been live stream. That's trademark too. But anyway, some kind of, it wasn't being broadcast to the world. It was being broadcast to these 4 locations or 3 or 2 or whatever. But the fact that the technology is so advanced now that it could find it, connect it, and say, nope, they don't have permission, and shut it down everywhere was just amazing to me too.
I've sat through many of Joanne's classes, and when we get to this topic, every time it gets very lively. People are saying, well, what do you mean? I play this all the time. I've never been caught, or I don't understand.
I got it off the internet.
Yeah.
So that is the famous catchy creative property America's Got Talent story, and Tracy lived it, much to her dismay.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
As a volunteer producer, I'm thinking, what did I do? Who touched something? Because everybody panics.
And here's our big keynote speaker and entertainer. And because I assume she was singing also. All gone. Totally gone. Some unknown reason gone. Yeah. So, anything else you'd like to share with us about your career, your job, your thoughts,
Do everything Joanne says.
Oh, no. Maybe for the exam, but
I've met other CFPs who've done other classes and failed, and said I should have done Joanne's class first.
Well, thank you.
They did the other things that you shouldn't do. They memorized the copy chart and done other things, and it's like, you know what? Joanne has got a system that works. And I think, honestly, if I hadn't met you and done your class, I probably still wouldn't have my CMP, because I would have been still too afraid to even try.
Well, thank you. That part of it is as important to me. And I guess the other part that's really important is, do you use what you learned?
Oh my gosh, all the time. Yes.
Okay.
All the time. And I'm even more so grateful for the language that it gives me, because when I sit in a room with Disney executives and we're talking about, the site visit or contract negotiation and whatnot, I feel like I actually can
hold my
own, because I have a foundation of language to use, and I'm not fumbling around trying to come up with a word for certain things, because I learned it. It's been ingrained in me because I read the books and we talked it out, and
talking it out, I think, is the important part, because that's how you actually learn it and apply it, as opposed to just memorize it. And I bet you use the break-even formulas a bit, since you have to set pricing and things like that.
So Tracy, was it you? If it wasn't, please correct me. But was it you that responded on Joanne CMP Community to me
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I put something out there about attending a 150-person WebEx where they called the roll call. And it was horrible. People were on mute. They didn't know it, or two people tried to talk at once, and they called. It was 30 minutes of just sheer frustration. I was upset.
I could hear him in the other room. Like,
I can't believe it. Who would do that?
There's
many other ways to get that information.
I just attended a smaller meeting, had 20 people, and they did another roll call with this organization. So, what?
We could say government organization.
Federal
government
Bureaucrats.
Organization.
So.
A committee on a federal government. We'll just leave it at that. Yeah, but thanks for bringing up the community, and Tracy, thanks for getting involved in that.
I'll be posting. I'm not a CMP, but I live with one, and if you live with one, you sort of kind of.
He's also sat through my class more times. We won't talk about the fact he plays his game on his phone during it, but anyway, he had. But something. Oh shoot, where were we going with this? But yeah, for those of you who don't know, we had a CMP community on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn changed a lot of things. So we have set up a separate community on a platform called Mighty Network. So if you have ever been in any of my face-to-face, what was a 3-day class, then became a 2-day class. The very first class was actually 10 days, 3 hours. If you're any of those, if you've been in any of the virtual classes that I've taught since the pandemic, but we also expanded the community to include those of you who also maybe did something at one of the professional associations with me. So they weren't my classes, they were the organization's classes, like CMP at C and at WEC, PEC, Meet Different, even RCMA, although that was a half-day one. But that would be fine too. So it's a invite-only, excuse me, community. But we'd love to have you get involved, and we're beginning to separate it out. In fact, Tracy, take a look soon. I don't know if Kelly's gotten Chicago up as one of the geographical destinations. We're starting to set up groups around geographical clusters so people can actually know who's around them too, or if they're traveling, maybe who they might want to get to know.
I think the newest one was your independent planners topic group.
Yep, we have an independent planners group, so people can post it. That's what they do, so they're available. A little bit of word out for them, and then for those of you who might need to hire an independent planner, be able to find someone in our group too.
What was it I just posted yesterday or day before? Remember we were talking about, and you said you ought to post that. There'll be a lot of postings from me that it's kind of I got one foot under the tent, and I don't always understand it, but I'll throw stuff out there just for fun sometimes.
Yeah, he's pretty amazed and everything. And I know he learned a lot today from Tracy,
yes.
And so did Kelly, and so did I, about just who thinks of... That's the thing that's amazed me, and that's one of the things I love about teaching my class and everything, or networking at the conferences, is you find people who are planning meetings and events that never would have dawned on you. So it's like, oh, really? I mean, we know as a whole, the industry people go, wait, someone pays you to do that? That's a real job. But then that's even within our group that we go, wait, you plan meetings for churches? Like that kind of thing. So yeah. Anything you'd like to add, Tracy?
I could go on for days, so we should just probably stop.
Well, and we all know I could go on for days. Well, you know what? We'll get you on another topic. Maybe when we do the creative one or something like that, or if we do one on inclusivity, and you can talk about some of how you have to think about this in faith-based. We'll find another reason to get you on. Sounds.
I'd love to.
Sounds good. And I know you finally got your unbroken chair and easels.
I did. It's right here. I know nobody else is looking, but I know.
Yes. And I made a special canvas and easel for Tracy at the catchy for the catchy story. And it's, what did it say on it? Something about copyright.
Who owns the copyright?
Who owns the copyright? That's right. I made that one specifically for her. So anyway, thank you so much for taking this time this morning. Kelly, anything you wanted to ask Tracy before we got off or say about it?
Well, just thank you. I've then I loved hearing all of your story. Oh, and I'm a big fan of your story that Joanne tells in class. I remember when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, what a nightmare. And I had no idea they had that kind of technology out there. So yeah, big fan of that story.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, seriously, so appreciative. Glad we got to, now when I say, oh, wow, I actually met someone face to face, because most of my students in the past 2 years, I've only met 2 of the students who were new students for me since the pandemic happened. I've only met 2. And it's just so weird because I remember sitting and eating lunch with you and, our crazy pictures with the blankets out at the fountains and everything like that. So, but thanks so much. And yeah, hopefully we'll get you back on. Thanks for being active in the CMP community. Really appreciate that. Steve, anything?
Very nice. It's fun.
It's fun? Good.
Yeah.
No, I learned a lot. I had no idea. So this industry is pretty wild. I'll just go back to my Internal Revenue Code.
Well, and I think, one of the neat things when I first started talking about careers in the field, this is a good example of it. And I told people, if you love meetings and events, but you don't love what you do, there is a place for anyone who loves meetings and events in the industry. It may be the types of meetings and events you're planning, like, faith or medical, or, having a purpose behind them. And it's such a diverse industry in so many ways in terms of what people do. You can find the one that fits for you. I'm really convinced. If you love meetings and events, there is a place for you. You just maybe have to dig because you don't know it exists, So, well, thank you so much to all 3 of you for being on today. And with that...
we'll get this posted soon.
Well, they will be hearing it. We don't have to tell them that because it will be posted.
By the time they hear this, it would have been posted.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah, we got it. Don't forget, if you qualify to be in the community and you want to be, reach out to us if you didn't get the invitation.
It's supposed to be a CMP, right?
No, they had to have been in my CMP classes. They don't have to have finished the journey yet.
Oh, I've been in your class.
So, yeah, you're in the community. And the e-guide. So a lot of you I know already know us, so that's great. So again, thank you so much. Happy, this is we're kind of at the beginning of the spring, so hopefully this is a great season for all of us in so many ways. So thank you so much, and we'll get together on the next edition of Sit in the Attendees Chair.